So now we're going to talk about naming polynomials. So polynomials are going to have a first name and a last name, just like we do. Now, I went ahead and highlighted, we're going to talk about the first name by the degree of the polynomial, which I need to talk to you about that, and then the last name, which is the number of terms in the polynomial. So just like we would have our first and last name. So some polynomials will have the same last name but different first names. So just like my name is Moana Rupley, my husband is Keith Rupley, my son is Carson Rupley, and my other son is Luke Rupley. So those could be like polynomials where they have different first names but they have the same last name. Or we could have polynomials with the same first name, so Keith and Keith, but this one has last name is Rupley and this one has Smith. So again, we're going to have polynomials that have the same first name, the same last name. They might be completely different. But the key thing is a polynomial has two names, a first name and a last name. And that's what you're going to be learning in this video. So you should be able to identify polynomials and name them and put them in standard form. So the ones that you really need to memorize are the ones in these two boxes. So these have special names, like a three-sided polygon is a triangle, and a five-sided polygon is a pentagon. So we have special names for certain things in math. So same thing applies to polynomials. So a degree of 0, so that would be like just a number. There's no variable with it. So we call those constants. So in the previous video we were talking about standard form and we put the constants at the end. So this 7 is a constant because it has a degree of 0, which means it does not have a variable. Okay, linear, so you have to memorize these names. Linear means that it has a degree of 1. So that would just be like saying x. X to the first, y to the first, a to the first, any variable to the first. Quadratic, I know sometimes quad sounds like 4, but for polynomials and for algebra, quadratic actually refers to the power of 2. So that's a degree of 2. So x squared, y squared. Quadratic can also be two variables together with the power of 1. So if I put x and y together, they both have a degree of 1, but because they're together, that's a total of 2. So this has a degree of 2. This has a degree of 2, and this has a degree of 2. The tricky one is this, so that does have a degree of 2. Okay, cubic is to the third power. So if we have x to the third, y to the third, or we could have something similar to x squared y. So x squared has a power of 2, degree of 2, y has a power of 1, so together that makes 3, which is a cubic. So keep that in mind. The variables together, they have to be right next to each other. They can't be separated with a plus or a minus, but variables right together, the product, then whatever their exponents add to be is the degree. Okay, anything beyond 3, so 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you would just say for the 4, 4th degree. For 5, you'd say 5th degree. 6, you'd say 6th degree. 7th degree, 8th degree. 20th degree. So anything above 3, you just say that number with the word degree. Okay, so that's your first name. When you're naming polynomials, you look at their degrees. So that's their first name, like my first name is Moana. Their last name depends on how many monomials, how many pieces there are to that name. So if there's only one thing in the name, it's called a monomial. If there's 2 things, that's a binomial. 3 things is a trinomial. And actually, we probably need to put this in somewhere. 4 or more, so maybe we just make a note here, 4 or more. I should have another row in my table there. We just call that a polynomial. A polynomial. I'm trying not to run off my page. Okay, so if there's 4 things in a group, we call it a polynomial, 5 things a polynomial, and so on. But be very careful. The first name is the degree. The last name is how many there are. So let's just try a few. Okay, the best way to learn this is just to try it. Okay, so we're going to look at these little, hello, my name is, and so I'm trying to get it all in the picture for you. Okay, so remember, the first name is the degree. The last name is how many terms there are. Okay, so first I make sure this is in standard form, which it is, because my variable with my exponent is first, and then I have a constant at the end. So this has a degree of 3. So this has a degree of 3, so its first name is cubic, and there's 2 items. So you count based on what is being added or subtracted together. So there are 2 items here. This is a monomial, and this is a monomial. When they're separate, they're called monomials. But together, they make a group of 2. So that's a binomial. So this is going to be a cubic binomial. So that is the name of that polynomial. It is a cubic binomial. Okay? Now again, make sure, example number 2, that they're in standard form. It is. Now remember, this x and y together, because they're together, that makes a degree of 2, because x has a 1, y has a 1. So you can even like write those in there. So that's a degree of 2, which up here we call that quadratic. And there are 3 terms, so that's called a trinomial. So 1, 2, 3. This is called a quadratic trinomial. Oh, out of my name tag. Okay. Example number 3. This has a degree of 6. Remember, anything above 3, we just say 6th degree. So this is a 6th degree, and there's only one thing there. So that's a monomial. So this is called a 6th degree monomial. All right, make sure you're spelling correctly because they're right up here. They're on your paper, so make sure you spell them right. Okay, let's do example 4, 5, 6. And then this is what you're going to be doing for homework tonight. And we're going to do a little bit more practice together, too. Okay, example 4. Oh, my goodness. Look at all these variables. They all have a degree of 1. So this is going to be a linear polynomial because there's 4 terms here. So 4 or more, we just say polynomial. So this is called a linear polynomial. Okay, example 5. This has a degree of 2. Now, don't add all of them together. You're just looking at the biggest one that's in standard form. So you're looking at the first one. So that is a degree of 2. That is quadratic again. And then there's 2 terms. So quadratic, 2 terms, binomial. So we call this a quadratic binomial. Okay, the last one is not in standard form, so we need to rearrange it. So we get 4x to the third, because that has the higher exponent, plus 5x plus 8. A third power is called cubic. 3 terms is called a trinomial. So this is a cubic trinomial, and we're done. So this is just an introduction. We're going to do a little bit more together. In your note packet, you'll notice a couple more pages to practice because you just have to practice to get good at it. But that is how we're going to be naming polynomials.